Hi guys, welcome once again to Otto's Garage. Right, welcome back. It's time now that we seriously need to start having a look at some of that wiring, because basically the mechanics are pretty much done and it ain't going to run without any sparks. So I've had a thought about the ECU, and although somebody had mentioned about using Can-Ms on it, when I was looking around I suddenly realised that I had a VEMS unit, which is for a Audi V8 project that I've kind of shelved at the moment, but that's going to be next in line. In any event, one thing led to another, and I dug out a box, and I think the ECU, the VEMS ECU, is in this box. So let's just have a look and see if we can find it. So there's a bit of dust on there, but in any event, I'm pretty sure that somewhere in here, and there she is, we have got our VEMS ECU, which is quite straightforward, but this is actually quite a powerful bit of kit. So this is version 3.3, and there's a lot of support available on the VEMS website. They even do a module on this which Bluetooths straight to a Android tablet, and I'm kind of wondering whether that might be the way to go for the dash. I can mount the tablet in behind the steering wheel there. So in any event, that is what we've got. I'm going to have a bit of a dig through the box and see what I've got in the way of loom and connections, etc. And then basically I think that will be the way to go, because this unit here now I think is about $1,400, something like that, if you bought one of those new. And as it's sat on the shelf, I might as well use it, because it'll do a lot of stuff. It's quite a powerful bit of kit, that is. So that's the VEMS unit. This box of cables here basically is the main loom for the Audi V8, which we've got over there. So that's the MR2 project, or what we call the MR8 project. But in any event, that's not doing anything at the moment, and we do need to get the Lancia up and running. And you can see here, these are the primary plugs that go into the back of the VEMS unit, and that is obviously a laptop connection there as well. And they have spliced this loom into the Audi loom, basically. So what that means is that I'm not going to be able to use this loom, obviously, because that's already been sorted out. So we're going to put that back in there. What we're going to have to do is get ourselves a standard kind of loom from VEMS, which will plug into their ECU, or the ECU that I've got, and then we can modify it accordingly for the Lancia. So it should be quite straightforward, really, because there's not many sensors on there. That Audi engine's got a lot of sensors all over the place on it, and of course it's 8-cylinder. We've only got 4. But in any event, that's going to be the next step, is locating one of their looms that we can plug into it, and then we've got a basis to work from. But actually having the brain itself, like I say, that's an expensive bit of kit, so that's kind of saved us a big chunk, and that means we can get going sooner rather than later. Watch this space. Vehicle electrics time. So what I've done initially is basically sort out where we're going to mount that Motor Gadget Blue unit, which is there, and then alongside it I've got my auxiliary fuse board, and then basically the Motor Blue will supply power to this, which in turn will power a couple of different items on the car. Obviously the Motor Gadget can't supply the power for things like the electric power steering and the electric water pump, so I'm going to run those through that fuse board as a separate kind of auxiliary circuit. But what I needed to do was just find out where everything's going to go, and then I can start putting some wires to and from the various connections in it. The other thing that we're going to have a look at is this nest of these are factory wires basically. So there are some connectors in there that I need out, things like onto the switchgear on the steering column and stuff like that. So I'm going to just pull some of those out and butcher them just so I can get to what I need basically. A lot of it obviously will be just scrapped off because it's, you know, power windows and all that sort of stuff. But there's obviously a few bits and bobs in there that we will use. Right, I've got that loom laid out, and this is why we are simplifying the wiring. Take a look at this. So she starts off quite straightforward, and then you've just got like a whole bunch of stuff here with relays and fuses, connectors. That's the main fuse box there, and it's running back down now towards the back of the car. We've obviously got 4 doors of control for windows and central lock-in, and light switches for when the doors open, and then we get back to the back, which is basically to the tail lights and stuff. So that is why I'm getting rid of it, because it's just like horrendous amounts of stuff that I just don't need, and I'm just trying to simplify it all. So in any event, I do need some, like I say, some of those blocks off the existing terminal blocks. So I'm going to have a dig through, find out what I do need, and then the rest of it's just going to get scrapped basically. Good luck. Right, well, it is wiring time. There's not a lot else we can do mechanically at the moment, and we have got to get some of those connections made. That in mind, I have started with some simple stuff, and we're looking at the backlights and ultimately the fuel pumps. What I've done is I've taken the original Lancia, obviously we've got the lights here, the original Lancia connectors, and robbed them out of the loom, and then basically we're putting in fresh wires with these shrink solder fittings basically. So how they work is that you I'll just show you these in the box here. You've got different sizes of them, and it's got a little bit of, get that in focus, a little bit of solder in the middle, and it's basically like a shrink tube, and you put your 2 stripped wires into each end of it. Let's grab one down here that we've had done, and basically you can see there that you basically heat it up, and the little shrink solder fitting in the middle melts onto the wire. And to do that, you really need one of these, which is a solder heat gun. You can adjust the temperature on the front. When it's lying dormant like that, it's not on. As soon as you pick up the gun, you can hear that's now blowing basically hot air out, and the temperature's rising. I've set that at about 427. You can go up to 450 with it. It's got a thin nozzle on it that directs the heat directly onto that shrink tube, and then basically everything melts together and makes the junction. I'm just going to pop that back on there. That will turn itself off when it gets cold. So you can see now that's going down in temperature, and when it gets to a certain temperature, it'll just shut the fan off in it. Brilliant bit of kit. And it's off our good friend Eric Bay, so you can have a look for one of those. What's it called? I don't know what it is, but of course it's Chinese. But in any event, it does the job. If you have a look for a heat solder gun, something like that, it'll probably pop up on eBay. I can't remember what I paid for it, but it wasn't a lot of money. Maybe about 40 or 50 quid, something like that. So that's what we're doing. We're going to work our way down the car, and we're just going to basically take a circuit at a time, and then follow that back into the front of the car. I'm going to have to pull the dash out because I do need to get in to the back of the distribution board, which is basically our good friend the Motor Gadget Blue. So I've popped that in there. You can see under there's a load of wires coming through from the back, but basically each circuit on the Motor Gadget Blue is attributed, you can't read that very well on there, it's attributed to its own kind of like wire thickness. I'm just going to show you what I've done here as well on our good old friend Mr. Whiteboard. So basically that's our Motor Gadget Blue. In the manual it'll tell you which ones go where. I haven't done any of the switch side. So switch side is gone. This everything is switched from earth, so you haven't got no live wires through any of the switches, they're just earth out. This senses it and basically then fires the correct power down to the different circuits. The two top ones, auxiliary 2, I'm going to put those into a fuse distribution board, and they're going to be for powering things like pumps and stuff like that. Most of these other ones, you can see there, side lights, ignition, high beam, low beam, blah, blah, blah. And then what I'm doing now is, as I'm working my way through it, I'm just giving them the correct, or giving them a color-coded wire, so that I know when I get up this end of the car, I've got the right wire going into the correct hole. This one goes to the starter solenoid. That's the main feed from the battery, and that's the main earth onto the bodywork. So that's basically what we're working on. So as we work our way through it, I'll add more and more colors, etc., and I'll do another diagram which will show the fuse block, which I've got the distribution block as well. So to tidy up the loom, I'm using some of this conduit tube, which is basically, let's grab the other end, it's kind of like got a pre-split in it. There, you can see that. And then what you can do, that's split all the way down the full length of it, and what you can do is you basically feed the cable into it. So you can see there where it's just kind of going into that, and it just tidies it all up. But the great thing about that stuff is that, unlike taping it all up, I could use self-amalgamating loom tape, something like that, but unlike that, you can just pull that conduit tube off. If you need an extra wire in there, or you've got to get at something, you can pull it off, you can get at to it, and then you can just stick it back again afterwards. Obviously, if I do it with loom tape, once she's wrapped up, and that gets a bit more tricky. And it just looks kind of neat as well. So what I'll do is I'm going to get all that fed in, and then we'll lose this particular loom is going to go in to the chassis holes down here, and then that'll hide behind this panel basically. So you won't actually see any of that. But it's good because it protects it as well. You know, it's very resilient, you know, to like edges and things like that. It's not going to get damaged. So that's the plan, and we'll do that for pretty much all the loom throughout the car. Another thing I need to sort out is the starter motor. I did order one, but it doesn't fit, and the original ones don't seem to be widely available unless you're going to pay a couple £100. So anyway, I thought I'll just have a quick look at the old one, because it might just be a bit dirty on the outside. And what I've done here is I've just mounted it up in the vise. We've got an earth, which basically replicates what it would be fixed to the gearbox. That goes down onto our new Toyota MR3 battery actually, and then I've got the live coming back up. We've connected that up onto the back of the solenoid, and then we've got the fly lead here, which when we touch across gives us a nice result. So basically that is going nicely in and out. There's no hesitation. I've tried it 4, 5, 6 times. It just goes immediately. So I think what I'm just going to do for now is clean that up and put that back on the car, because at the end of the day, if it does go in the future, I can get at it quite easily. Now we've modified that bulkhead. So that's good news. That's saved me a couple £100. One of the jobs outstanding on the mechanical side of things is the plumbing up of the intercooler and all of the coolant hoses. And with that in mind, I bought one of these kits off eBay, which is kind of like a generic kit of parts for the intercooler. Anyway, this is what we've got. So basically, it comes with a bunch of silicone hoses, a couple of 90s in there, some connectors, a load of decent clips. They're not just Jubilee clips, these are like proper clamps for it. And the other thing that sold it to me as well is that all of the pipes that we've got in here have got swages on the end, so it can't blow any of the silicone hoses off basically. Obviously some of the parts are oversized. I don't know whether I'm going to be able to use these 180 degrees, but what I did do is I cut one of them down. I had a 90 and I've cut that down, and I've put my own swage on the end of it. And and that was using our good friend, which we used before on the floor panel. So it's basically got a, you just feed the tube around that. This is the offcut that we did, so you can see there, as long as you can get a swage on it, it's not perfectly straight, but it will stop the hose from popping off when it's under boost, basically. So again, all you do is you just basically turn the handle around there and you feed the pipe through at this end, and basically it forms that little raised piece on it. I'll just show you that. So basically it goes over there. You push it in there between the two and it just forms it as it is crushed down. So with that in mind, we then obviously need to be able to get some pipes through, and the first one is this puppy here, which is going to connect. So that one's going on the end of the intercooler, and which is here obviously, and then basically we're going to feed it up through towards the air box. So what I'm aiming on doing is getting the turbo to feed the far end of the intercooler, and then that will get rid of all the heat hopefully as it comes through, and then this will just be a short run back up to the throttle body at that end there. So I think what I'm going to have to do is we'll get this on first. We'll have a look. This is over length. I think that's going to probably have to be cut here somewhere, and then this one will join it, and that will go into the air box with another silicon hose adapter. We've got to go to kind of like 2.5 to 3 inch at the far end up there. The other thing that we will need to put in here somewhere is the feed for the idle control valve. I think that goes into that point somewhere or other. Anyway, we'll have a look and see what we've got. With that elbow in place, you can see how that pipe's disappearing off into the engine bay behind it. And from inside, that's where she's coming up. And obviously what we've got to do then is get her from here round 90 degrees into there, and that's where our little friend here comes into. So basically that is going to fit kind of in that position. So we'll have a step reducer at the throttle body end, and then the one that we've just fitted is going to have to be cut off, and I've just put that little blue mark there. So I'm going to take that pipe off, cut that, put a swage on it, and then we can connect the two together, and that's going to give us our run straight from the intercooler up into the throttle body. So that's cut off. What you'll see now is you've got all these nasty burrs inside. That has got to be cleaned up, because obviously any of those that get sucked into the engine, that's bad news. And what I use for that is one of these deburring tools. So it's got kind of like a swiveling blade on one end of it, and that's quite sharp. That is purely designed for getting on the inside of pipes, basically. So I'm going to give that a whiz round on the inside of this one. We'll get those burrs off it, and then we'll get the swage on it. So the outside of it, I've just basically given that a go with the wire wheel, but you've got to be careful that you don't, run it all the way up the tube, because we don't want to use this shininess. Obviously the very end of it's going to be hidden by the silicone hose. So just run your finger over it, make sure there's no sharp edges anywhere, and obviously there's no loose material that's going to come off. And then now we can put our swage on it. That's the pipe loaded up, so I've just gone over the top. So basically it's going to push the wall into this groove here, and that will give us the effect of this riser, which forms the swage basically. It doesn't have to be too extreme, but it does need to be kind of big enough that the hose can't slip over it, or the clip can't slip over it. So I'm going to give that a go, and I'll show you what I've done afterwards. Now what I find is basically when you tighten this bolt here, that presses down on the top former. I find give it a good wind down, and then give it a run round, and you can see it's started to make the swage on that. And then what we'll do is we'll tighten it again, do the same again, and you've got to steady the tube, because if it can wander quite easily, and then you find you've come around the other side and it hasn't aligned, it can easily form a spiral. So you just got to watch that. So I'll just tighten that up again, and we'll give it another spin. And having removed it, you can see that has formed a nice swage all the way around it. When it starts, it'll kind of follow the groove. It does get easier, but that's absolutely perfect. It's not too deep. and I know for a fact that once we get the Jubilee on there, she ain't going to be able to pop off. So next job is try and get that offered up on the car and see what she looks like. Well, there it is in situ. Don't know whether I'm 100% sure about it because it's got a bit of contact down here, and I think even when we get that all adjusted up and fitted up the other end, it might just be in the way there, so I may have to redo this piece, I think, or get a longer joining piece so that we can just kind of bend it away. But in any event, you get the idea. I will obviously have to have a double check on what kind of, if any, fittings that we need to put into this to take off for any sensors or anything like that, you know. So anyway, I'll have a look on the book there, that'll tell us what to do. But you kind of get the idea of how it all works there, quite straightforward. And what we'll do on the other one is we'll run off the top of the turbo and we'll send it that way. So I'm going to have to get a different sized fitting to go on there. However, I like it. It's shiny. We like shiny. Right, let's have a look at those pipes that we've got going from the turbo to the intercooler, etc. So we've basically now got our extra pieces that we need. So this is the inlet with the 3-inch, and that'll be the K&N going on there via a bend. We've got our reducer going onto the throttle body, so we just need to rejig this 90-degree bend round here, just so we can keep that away from the bodywork down there a bit. I have also had the reducer for the turbo, so that comes down 2.5 down to 2-inch. And then basically I've got the alley pipes running down there. I've tried to keep as much alley pipe as I can for pressure reasons, but there you go. And then that comes out down on this side. You can see that swooping downwards there. So I've just got to put one clamp on there. Tighten that clamp up at the back down there. Obviously she comes through there, and then we're going back up again to the throttle body. And I have had a look, and we haven't got any vacuum pipes or pressure sensors or anything on any of that lot. So it is just a straight plumb, which is quite good. But what I do need to do is work out the bend for the air inlet. So I'm just going to have a quick look at that now. Okay, so that's the last pipe with the swages formed on it. And that's the one that's going to... Up here, this is the 90-degree one that comes from the return off the front intercooler, and that goes around to the throttle body. So I'm going to get those ones on there. You can see how we've already fitted, albeit without a clamp on it. There's no clamp on there for now. That one needs tightening up as well, but at least that's kind of the right way there for the inlet. So that's looking cool. So get this one on here, and we'll just have a look and see what that's like, and then we should be able to tighten up some clamps, hopefully. Well, they're on. Let's have a look at them. So that's that. All done. We've got them all tightened up at the moment. I still have one more thing to do on the turbo, and that's sort out that bracket for the wastegate actuator, basically. So this lot is, most of it's going to have to come off again anyway, but that's not a problem. Usually with these builds, you do have to kind of fabricate, put it together, take it all apart again. But it's great to see it all looking where it should be. At least it's in its final resting place and all the fabrication work's done. So next time I take it off, I know it'll just have to drop on quite straightforward back to where it should be. But it does look great, and it's going to do the job, which is even better. I think probably what I will do is perhaps put a little plate down this side, so we end up kind of like with a cold air box there, you know, from behind the headlight. So it'll be drawing out from there, basically. That'll be quite straightforward to do. But yeah, it looks good. I'm loving the polished alley on it, and around the front there as well, obviously. She's looking really cool. And I know that the bumper's going to fit over it, so that's really good. So the only other thing that I might do is I may well put some heat protection tape, you know, some wrap down on this one here, because obviously it's going past the exhaust manifold. and it's got the radiator. And the other thing that we are going to have to look at is there's no room for a fan, you know. So what I am thinking is whether I might, if you can see kind of in there, down that side of it there, down the radiator, I might be able to get some smaller fans maybe in here, just to kind of aid the flow. I don't think fans are going to be a problem, you know, when I'm hill climbing it, because the engine is going to be running for such a short amount of time. There won't be an issue on that. But if I want to take it to a show or something, I end up going down the motorway, you know, in the summer, that might be an issue. So in any event, I am going to have a look at some kind of fan on the cooling side of things for the radiator, but I might have to put a variety of smaller fans rather than one big one on there. But anyway, that's cool. I'm liking that a lot, and it does mean that we've got all those orifices sealed up, so we're not going to get any foreign bodies in the engine at the moment. Cool for cats. Just one other thing I'd say, if you do get one of those intercooler kits with the pipes and the hoses off eBay, say for example, and they haven't got swaged pipes, don't worry too much about it, because I must say I've probably cut off 80% of the factory swages on mine and had to reapply them. But what I would recommend you do is do not put those pipes on, the pressurized ones, without a swage. It'll just push those hoses off eventually. And then you'll have no boost, obviously. But yeah, top tip for you there. So that's a bit more of an update for what we've been doing to the Prisma. Obviously, we've got a lot more wiring to do, but we have made a start on that. I did get a little bit sidetracked with doing this, but I hope you'll agree it needed doing, and it does look cool. And it'll keep it cool, even more importantly. But anyway, the long and short of it is, as they say, that we've come to the end of another episode of Otto's Garage. So thanks for watching. Stay safe. Catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye.